mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings.
I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier. My name is John Gordon. I'll be your host.
And I'm your host, Katie Burke.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. We bring the resource to you, the DU Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I am broadcasting here from a very special place to me. It's Spread Oaks Ranch near Bay City, Texas. The place has a tremendous amount of history, both in a Texas history standpoint and also in waterfowl hunting. This is an incredible the place in the Middle Texas coast. You've got, what used to be a tremendous goose hunting area, which now has become more of a duck hunting area, but it still holds a real, deep affection for waterfowl hunters, especially this time of year during teal season, which we're here with DU Nation doing a film right now, which you'll be able to see on YouTube with Micah and Alyssa Godwin, a couple of really great young taxidermists. So it's going to be exciting, so got to check that out on DU Nation. But my guest today is a Texas waterfowl historian. He's written 3 books on Texas waterfowl history. And if you haven't read them, you need to, because if you're a fan of history like I am, they're just really must-reads, especially from a Texas standpoint. So please welcome to the DU podcast is Rob Sawyer.
Hello, John. Welcome back. Good trip from Mississippi, I think.
It was. It's been great. We've been moving and shaking, Rob. We've been filming all the way across from Louisiana, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. It's been a great trip. Once again, people will be able to see all this on DU Nation coming on YouTube. It's a fast-paced, organic series. So we're here talking today to Rob, and like I say, this man knows more about Texas waterfowling history, I think, than anybody I've known. It's near and dear to my heart. I got moved to Texas when I was a kid, right? I grew up in Mississippi, and just through circumstances, through family, it often happens. When you're a kid, you don't have a choice, right? Where are you going to move? So we moved to northeast Houston, and I went from a world of basically mallards, wood ducks, to geese, right? And it was an eye-opening experience for a kid. I would sit out on my front porch on an October evening and listen to the snows and the specks flying over my house, heading west and east of Houston to the rice fields for where they were in winter, and was just captivated by it. So I had to become a goose hunter. And goose hunting really gets in your blood. Wouldn't you say that's right, Rob?
There's no question about it.
There's no question about it. There's nothing like it. Once you become a goose hunter, duck hunting, which is great, almost becomes like, a very secondary thing, man. It's just not the same. And it really gets in your blood. So what we're going to talk about here is Houston is really at the center of 2 different waterfowling worlds, okay? From the east side of Houston to where we're at on the west side. They were very different cultures. And I don't think people really know that. And to this day, you've just got a different world on both sides of a major city, one of the biggest cities in the United States. So Houston is sitting in the center of what is really some great waterfowl hunting. So let's talk about, like you said, Rob, first of all, the east side of area. When I think about the east side, I think about when I was a kid at Barrow Ranch. Very interesting thing. I don't know if you saw recently that Gunner Kennels put out a special edition kennel. They do, a short run, and it was the Anahuac.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So somebody at Gunner obviously knows the east side history. And the picture they even used was at Barrow Ranch.
Really?
And I think it was one of the pictures you had in your book, like 1975, out in front of Barrow Ranch at the gate.
Oh, yes.
You remember that shot? So that the culture is still permeating into waterfowling, right?
Good.
So talk about, the east side people, Winnie, High Island, Gilchrist, and, how they really got going and how it's different from over here.
East side and west side, it was all about duck hunting. It was always about duck hunting. Now, the east side was fortunate compared to the west side prairies in that they had all that southeast Texas, almost Louisiana-style black marsh. So white geese were always on the coast. They were always in that three-corner square grass that they burn off. So geese were part of their culture. Most of them shot ducks in the marsh and plenty of geese, but they never really developed the kind of that rag spread culture in those days. It was all ducks and geese and a huge Louisiana influence. And, of course, that Louisiana influence was really about duck hunting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and there's some real characters I remember from my youth. Guys like Forrest West, right? Gene Campbell, Jack Holland, Joe Legault. I mean, they were legends. And it's really interesting that, on this trip, that we're hunting with Shannon Tompkins' brother. And Shannon was really kind of the East Side guy.
Yeah, he was.
Right, on the Houston Chronicle when he wrote about it.
He guided with Gene. He guided in Anahuac and Barrows Ranch.
So I learned a lot about the East Side from Shannon, in the paper, where like Doug Pike was the West Side guy, right? He guided for Gore. He was a goose guide. So it was really interesting the niches that those guys had within that world that they wrote about it, and that we're be hunting with Shannon's brother. What was his name again?
That's Les Tompkins.
Les Tompkins. I mean, tomorrow, so it's fantastic, man. I mean, I can't wait to meet him. So you've got that culture over there, on the east side of Houston. And I'm gonna tell you, folks, the worst mosquitoes on the face of the planet. I don't know if Vietnam was worse. I've never been there, but I had to imagine that it's pretty similar.
Well, you raise a good point. East side was tough. It was black marsh. It was deep marsh. It was mosquito marsh. They earned every bird they shot.
Oh, it's the truth. I can remember from when I was a little kid, first started going to the Bear Ranch area. I was around 12. This is early 80s, and that marsh, it's hard to describe if you've never tried to walk through it.
Right.
I mean, you talk about you could. I mean, literally, it feels like you're about to sink, and you're not going to get out of it, right? I mean, you're sinking to your knees in this stuff, and you're trying to carry decoys across there. We hunted this morning with great West Side guide Mike Lanier. Another guy who was really a big part of it with Marvin Tyler, and from the early days of the goose hunting scene on Garwood Prairie, and he talked about that Marvin, knew Joe Legault, pretty well, and he was like, Mike really, it was his big goal, man, we got to go to the east side, we got to check this out, we got to go to Bear Ranch, right? And Marvin was kind of laughing at him like, well, you got all this in your backyard, but if y'all want to go over there, I'll set it up. They go over there and they meet Joe at the shack, right, and everything like that, and they get their blind draw and everything, and he said they go out there and they started out with like 3 bags of decoys, and by the time they got to the blind, they had dropped everything but one
exactly.
Because they were about to die. We were trying to walk through that marsh.
And those are famous stories. People would go out the first time with all their regular hunting gear, and Joe Legault used to say he would just follow the trails of discarded gunning stuff, and that's where he knew where his gunners were. He'd check on them, say hello, and then he'd follow the trail of discarded clothes and decoys back.
It's the truth, man. It was a bad deal. So the east side, you had to be very tough to be able to go in those marshes. And legends like Jack Holland, man, you had a great story in your book about Jack, being caught by Joe Legault, hunting on the backside.
Yeah, he thought he could outsmart Joe Legault. He said nobody would walk from the gatehouse, the shack, to the coastal side. It was too many miles of black mud, too much marsh. And so he would sneak in with a boat, and he'd just poach the coastal side of Barrows Ranch. Well, one day he sees this guy walking across the sawgrass, like as Joe Legault's daughter put it. She said, walking like a purple gallinule right across that marsh. Nobody could do it. And he was like 58, 60 years old. And he caught him, and he said, you report to the gatehouse tomorrow morning. Be there early. So Jack Collins expecting federal game warden, state guys, and a little bit of trouble. And he says, okay, I want you to guide for me every day for a week as your punishment. And Jack Holland became one of the better known and more famous guides out of Barrow Ranch.
Right. Jack Holland became, one of the fixtures of the east side, along with Gene and like I said, later Forrest West, another guy that was, his place, Los Patos in Gilcrest was one of the big outfits, really, on the whole east side in the history of it. Folks, Joe Legault was like, what was Joe Legault? 5'6", man, maybe 5'7". Right. Weighed about 120 pounds. So if anybody could walk across that marsh, it was Joe.
Yep.
Right. A guy like Mike Lanier, who's 6'4", big man. You try to get around that stuff. You could really not come back from a situation like that.
Correct. And Joe Legault, for folks that haven't heard the name in a while or at all, there were a few legacy names in Texas waterfowling that educated hunters about their sport as time progressed. And one of his big contributions, one of the first to popularize, shut down at noon. Don't night hunt or evening hunt. Just don't do it. You're driving your birds out. You'll have better hunting in the long run. And he's credited with that with that knowledge and getting that message out. And of course, we follow that pretty much to this day all around the coast.
That's the truth, and you're right about that. Joe was one of the first guys who really, said, let the birds rest. I mean, give them some rest. If you don't let them rest, I mean, you're going to blow them out. I mean, too much pressure on them,
right.
You're not going to have success. Another thing, I mean, Joe was a big Ducks Unlimited supporter. I know that. I mean, I know that he used to go to a lot of different events, stuff like that. I mean, he was a known figure, so he really, he was a conservationist as well as anything else. And I think, the legacy of the Bear Ranch, a lot of it now, I think, is sanctuary. Am I correct? For birds?
Yeah, that's correct. Joe and others, Jackson Ranch, they saw superports coming. They saw development of our natural resources along the coast. And, it wasn't an easy decision, but the bulk of that land now that made up that wonderful shooting area of coastal southeast Texas is either National Wildlife Refuge or state.
And so, you had the East Side guys, right? And like I said, like Pike and them, they were the West Side guys, that really wrote about, and you're talking about names like Jimmy Reel, Marvin Tyler, Clifton Tyler. That's right. So those were guys that, really made the white goose a big draw, and they basically had to figure out how to hunt them, right? I mean, with the white rag spreads and all that, and talking to Mike today, going from heavy, cloth rags to light plastic to windsocks. I mean, it kind of evolved over the years. But talk a little bit, Rob, about the West Side guys and their love for white goose hunting and how they turned it into a business.
Yeah, that's to me a fascinating story because we talked about the East Side and they had ducks, they had geese, and it was a culture of two different types of birds. Whereas on the West Side, and when we say West Side, we're talking about the Katy Prairie and what they call the Eagle Lake Prairie now in that area. And it was all duck country, all potholes, big mallard country. They had geese. They had Canada geese, but they never had the white goose. White goose was always on the coast. And when rice was introduced about 1900, and it took a while for the white goose to decide that I'm leaving the coast and I'm going to this new grain. Gentlemen would sit at their duck clubs. Both Jimmy and Marvin Jimmy Reel and Marvin Tyler guided that Eagle Lake Rod and Gun Club, and their clients would see all these white geese pouring into these fields certain times of the year. Well, we want to go shoot those. So I think the first Marvin Tyler shoot, Jimmy Reel said, I don't want to go out there. Marvin said, I will. Was 1948, 49. And Marvin had no idea how to hunt them. So the evolution started, 1920s, people used to talk about using newspapers for both ducks, particularly pintail, and today we call it litter. But they put it out on wherever they hunted, and this litter worked. So a group in Baytown, Texas, William Reed and another gentleman said, well, look, these newspapers blow around. Let's try white cloth. And one of their hunters took it to Jackson Ranch, and one of those hunters took it to the West Side. And the cloth rag was born and moved from the East Side to the West Side. Well, the West Side embraced it. All that rice country, and their duck shooting was slowing down quite a bit, as things do. You take the prairie potholes, turn it into rice country, it changes. And and some people say it was a good change, and others not so good. They they lost their prairie chickens, they lost their pothole mallards, but they gained white geese and they gained speckle bellies. So on the West Side, the change, the big change where the knolls and the potholes were leveled for rice production, it had effect. Much less mallards on the West Side. All the prairie chickens were gone, but the geese started moving in from the coastline to the rice fields, and that was about 1949. And Marvin Tyler and Jimmy Reel were at Eagle Lake Rod and Gun Club as duck guides, and their hunters wanted to start going after them. Wanted to start hunting them. And Jimmy Reel said, well, will you go? Marvin, I don't want to mess with it. Marvin went out on his first rice field, and his son Clifton says, well, he really didn't know what to do, how to shoot him. The evolution of the white cloth made its way. We call it the Texas rag spread, I think, because it started off mainly with cloth and then diapers, and it worked. You could put out 30, 40 pieces of white cloth, and these white geese would start screaming into West Side rice fields, and a new sport was born. It was popularized. It really took off in 1969. That's where a lot of old-timers like us remember an ABC Wide World of Sports segment with Andy Griffith, and Marvin Tyler was the host. And Marvin's business doubled the next year. It tripled the year after that.
That you can almost point to, okay, there's the point when it became big business on the west side for goose hunting. That's when people started coming from literally all over the world.
Correct. I was a kid in February, watched that segment. I was on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and I was happy with my giant Canada geese. But I saw that, and I said, I want to lay out in a rice field and shoot all those white geese. And I finally got a chance about 12 years later.
That's the marker to me, is 1969, the American Sportsman, which was, in a world nowadays, we have, I produced EUTV, right? We have channels devoted to outdoor television. There was one show.
That's right. It was Sunday afternoon, and you were glued to that television.
That's it, man. It was must-watch TV. I mean, I can remember some crazy stuff like Hank Jr. turkey hunting, and Robert Stack hunting ducks in Mexico and stuff. Man, I can still remember those shows, to this day. And Kurt Gowdy, man, what a host of the deal was. I mean, it was an incredible show. So, like I said, so you got the East and the West Side cultures, and then there's pockets of other folks, I mean, you had people farther, on the coast as well. I mean, you had the duck hunting culture on the coast, places like Rockport, Port O'Connor, and they still hunt ducks there today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, mostly, and that's one of the neat things about Texas. The geographical variation is also reflected in waterfowl populations. Rockport is known all the way to Baffin Bay for redheads and pintails.
Right.
Whereas when you look at the southeast side, you first think of the mottled duck. Even though you can't shoot as many as you used to, there was a day when you could shoot 25, then 12, then 6, then 2, then 1. But,
it went down drastically.
And that was mallard country. And when rice came out, I remember one dear old man, Freddie Absher, that lived on Jackson Ranch, and he said, well, as that old mallard disappeared, we hardly missed it because the pintail started coming in. So they went from shooting 10 mallards to shooting 10 pintails, and they were just as happy as they can be. And of course, now the pintail numbers are dramatically reduced.
Yeah, we saw another reduction in the pintail populations this year, and it was expected. We had some really dry conditions on the prairies the last couple of years, and we didn't have any counts, right? So the mallards, everybody knew it was coming, were down, and the pintails once again took a hit. The blue-winged teal, on the other hand, exploded, basically, are up almost 30%. And we're seeing it here, and y'all, like I say once again, you got to tune into DU Nation, okay? On YouTube.
That's correct.
We got we got East Side teal, we got West Side teal, okay? And it's just, you'll see that this is to me, the greatest place to hunt teal in the world is right here on the Texas coast, on both sides of Houston.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So here's something I want to talk about too, because I hunt a lot in Arkansas now. Okay, and to me, Arkansas Delta there has become what the west side of Houston used to be, as far as geese go, right? You've got all the snows and specks slid that way. They're still in the Central Flyway, but I think once they get to that point, they kind of slide, east to Arkansas. One thing, the rice base changed, but I think you've heard you say this, Rob. It was 1,000 little cuts, man. They pushed the geese over there.
Yes, it was. You can look at it in the big picture, long term, and they've always shifted. They've always moved. There never used to be a blue goose in the state of Texas. They're always on the west side of western coast of Louisiana.
Right.
So, the Cajuns could get mad at us for that big shift of blues our way. Interesting, the speckled belly was dominantly shot on the Rio Grande Delta in Texas in the 1800s, early 19s, and it shifted this way. And we've still got wonderful pockets of goose populations in Texas. But it's not like it was.
No, you were telling me you had a pretty nice hunt in El Campo area last year.
That's correct.
And so you still can do it. It's just, and I tell you what they don't have in Arkansas is a goose hunting culture. right? I mean,
Correct.
it's always been duck, 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 duck,
Right.
duck in Arkansas. Mallard is king. I mean, that's the other thing that people don't really know. You were talking about earlier, that Texas coast used to be mallard country big time.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
was.
you look at the old photos of the straps; they were all mallards, right? And
Yes.
and people in Arkansas and stuff, who and now in Kansas, Oklahoma, where mallard is king. They don't know that this area was big time mallards at one point. So you're right. The flyways, I think, are always shifting.
Right. They're always shifting in response to I would say, predominantly man-made changes.
Exactly. Well, there's Ducks Unlimited is at the forefront of trying to restore as much habitat as we can. But let's face it, Rob, you go to a place like the Katy Prairie. Well, I think Mike called it this morning. It's Katy concrete.
Yes.
There's no prairie left, right? I mean,
Right.
When I was in high school going out there, it was rice country as far as the eye could see, all across the horizon, man. And there was fields and geese just flying everywhere, and it was the most incredible sight. And now, well. You got subdivision. That's about it. I mean, the whole thing has changed with the very gigantic expansion of Houston. I mean, it's just blown up, across, It's hard to describe people who didn't grow up there to how big it is now compared to what it was then.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's really Houston is blown up.
We have suburban sprawl out here. We're in Matagorda County, and
Right.
we're a few decades away from suburban sprawl. But now what's biting us is what I call energy sprawl. We tend to think that solar panels and wind turbines are the answer to a whole bunch of problems. Well, if you value agricultural land, if you value land for native and migratory wildlife, it's not the answer. It's covering thousands of acres. We're losing classical, Jimmy Reel's classic roosts in Garwood, solar panels now.
Oh, that's right. I mean, the Pierce Ranch. I mean, that
Correct.
was some of the great waterfowl country in this whole area is turned into, renewable energy kind of deal, which is great. I mean, it's not bad, but once again, it's just a huge change.
That's a price that has to be paid. And if you're an outdoorsman, a sportsman, or a naturalist, you're paying that price more than others.
That's the truth. Like I said, we at DU, we really are doing everything we can. It's an ongoing job, and I know right here at Spread Oaks, I mean, y'all have done some tremendous work in partnering with Ducks Unlimited on this landscape.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to be a part of that. Almost 6,000 acres. It's got a conservation easement on it, and the owner, Forrest Wiley, is a big DU donor, and DU's had a big part in putting boots on the ground. We're up to 600 acres of water now, over 30 units, and they're full of duck food, they're full of wildlife, and they will be in perpetuity. And every landowner that we can enroll in that type of thinking and those kinds of formal programs, it's just one, it's a small win. Here, locally it's a big win, but it's just a whole bunch of small wins that will end up culminating, hopefully, into a big win.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a huge tool that we've used to. Well, I mean, you look at places like the Ace Basin in South Carolina. I mean, it would be golf courses and condos if it was not for conservation easement.
Right.
I mean, that it keeps that land in perpetuity to where it's undeveloped, unspoiled wildlife habitat. And it's not just about ducks. I mean, you're talking about it affects water. And every other species of wildlife. It really helps people. That's one message we're really been trying to get across is that, the work that we do. Yeah, it's great for ducks. I mean, we're Ducks Unlimited. Let's face it, that's the name of the organization. But, what we try to do, helps people and other wildlife too. So, and like I said, just the work that we've done on the ground here and all over the Texas coast. I mean, the Prairie Wetland Project. I mean, and we are our great partners. Texas Parks and Wildlife. We've got U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've really, without those partners, it's hard to get it done. But all together as a team, we're really making a difference on keeping these places intact and unspoiled. So,
well, you said an important part of that message is that landowners that want to preserve the land, the culture, the heritage, the history, wildlife. There's a lot of partners there to help. Both from oftentimes matching grants and from a knowledge standpoint.
That's something that DU has become masters of. Basically, is turning $1 into $3.
Yep.
Right, and that's the key. Because to conserve over 15 million acres in 85 years, without those partners, without those matching dollars, it's not possible.
Right.
And so we really have worked hard on it. In a place like the Texas coast, Louisiana coast, but it's just, this, like I said, this area is near and dear to my heart, man. I lived in El Campo. I guided down here for many years, chasing those geese. I was just thinking about that the other day, and my knees, I think, have paid a real price on the chasing those birds across those rice fields, man. I mean, it's just, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, right?
Right.
I mean, it was an incredible experience. So, it's all good, but man, like I said, we can't thank you enough, for hosting us here. We got DU TV coming up again this December here at Spread Oaks. We got DU Nation going on right now. So once again, I can't thank y'all enough for you and Forrest. I mean, the hospitality has been unbelievable.
Well, we enjoy it. We love having you down here, and we love the storytelling.
Yeah, that's right, man. You and I get together, man, and we just can't help but start talking about the stories and waterfowling history, which is so important to me. I mean, I just love it. It's an incredible deal. So,
and it was fun coming to this ranch because I enjoyed writing and researching the history of Texas. You look at the Chesapeake Bay, and there's a stack of 20 books, 30 books on it, the history of waterfowl hunting. In Louisiana, when I lived there, lots of books. I got to Texas, there weren't any. Texas didn't seem as if it had anybody or any tomes, any volumes of books. In those days, we read books. We didn't go to the internet, and,
right.
And it was a lot of fun for me. So I had written quite a bit, or a fairly good section on Matagorda some 15 years ago, and then I got a chance to work the same area where I had written the history. The Jennings Lake that runs through this property is a natural lake, and it was just as a combination of rice as it came in, and Jennings Lake roost was probably the largest waterfowling area in this county. People would come from Denver. Bay City was founded by a Denver duck hunter who wanted things like bars and food and a nice bed. Well, let's build a town. So when we duck hunt in Texas once a year, so they founded a town, Bay City, 1896. And they hunted Spread Oaks. Well, what became Spread Oaks Ranch?
Spread Oaks. Right. You're talking about Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston. I mean, some tremendous characters within the Texas history were right in this area. So let's see. Let's just go through your books real quick, Rob, and see. It's 100 years of Texas waterfowling history. Is that the first one?
Well, I started off because Harry Walsh wrote this seminal volume called The Outlaw Gunner. And Harry Walsh lived across the river from me in the Chesapeake Bay, and I just grew up with punt guns and all the stuff around me, I said, well, man, I read a Shannon Tompkins article, and he talks about market hunting. I'm going to do the market hunting of Texas as a history book. So that's what it started out as, and along the way is when I discovered all the rest of the Texas history, the old gunning clubs and people from around the world that would come to Texas to hunt. And so I said, well, I'm having fun with this, so I put out another book first, which was the history of the guides, the carved decoys in Texas, the hunting clubs, and that one's called 100 Years of Texas Waterfowl Hunting. And one of my critiquers said, well, really, it's about 175 years you covered, but that doesn't read so good.
Right.
The second one I put out was the market hunting book, and that one's kind of near and dear to my heart. Then I put out a coffee table book, which was all the photos that I collected over a decade, which is some 400 and some old photos of Texas waterfowling.
Oh, yeah, I take that book out often and just look through the photos. I mean, because it's just, to me, it's a look inside a window in time of a very different culture. Like, downtown Houston, sporting goods stores,
right.
People lined up with ducks across the front. Could you imagine if that was going on today?
My gosh.
People would freak out.
Oh, yeah. The police would be called.
Yeah, the police would be called, man. But that was a way of life,
It was
right?
a different culture. Those ducks were on everybody's plate.
Yep, that's right. I mean, it was a whole different culture. And Houston, like I said, is in the middle of it, literally, of a great waterfowling tradition.
And you do a really good job because that's exactly right. That Eastern Cajun and different landscapes on one side, and then the west side's got that wonderful German and Bohemian culture, and very different worlds. And they met a lot of times, and when they would meet in the outdoor world, good things happened.
Good things happen, man. Houston, Texas, man. it's not just the Texans and the Astros. It was
That's right.
the duck and the goose hunters, right? As well.
It surely was.
Most people don't think about Houston and think about that unless you lived it like we have. So anyway, well, Rob, I surely have enjoyed this. This has been incredible. Thanks again for having us down. And like I said, folks, you check this stuff out on DU Nation. It's going to be some cool content.
Thanks for having me, John.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening once again to the Ducks Unlimited podcast and supporting DU and wetlands conservation.
John, I'll see you in a duck blind tomorrow morning.
Let's do it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks. Stay tuned to the Ducks.